Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and this podcast is dedicated to helping families love God and use tech. You are here for episode 2 of the In the Car podcast recording, but most importantly, you are here for episode 3 of the Summer Tech series. This is our third and final part of this series, and today's conversation is going to be how do we keep our tech safe in the summer. Just that idea of we already know how to manage it well. That's what we started with. We're going to be purposeful on it and we're going to be hope focused. We already know how to make summer fun. When our tech gets out of control, or if we just want to direct our children away from tech that they're perfectly fine with, but we want to give them analog adventures, we know how to do that now. We know how to get real world experiences that have beneficial stress. So then today, as our third part of the conversation, as the landing of the conversation on the 5 tech fixes, how do we make our tech safe? How do we do this well, whether it is safe or not already? How do we continue that conversation? So I want to take a quick half step back and say this conversation, part 3 of the tech series for this summer, really is the 5 tech fixes. And I had launched the series thinking that I'd make it summer focused and kind of work them in sneakily. And I was very proud of myself with those scenarios from the first episode of this series. But then I realized in the second one, it was already all written, but as I was getting to present it, I was like, you know what? Like, it will help families more if I'm just very upfront with what we're doing here, rather than getting over cute with how I weave it in so that people never notice. The point is you notice. The point is you know the 5 tech fixes. So the idea behind the 5 tech fixes is that we already know the 2 kinds of tech, and we already know how to assess if it's healthy, and we already know how to talk big picture, smartphones, video games, pornography. We understand the gospel that we're, yes, sinners saved by grace, and, which makes us saints, and we are saved for good works, to see God's kingdom come and his will be done, that is the gospel we are to be living out and to tell other people about. So then in light of that, how do we fix the unhealthy tech? What practical steps can we take? And so we keep our eyes on Christ. We stay hope-focused. We use purposeful tech, the stuff that's safe, that's a good fit, produces good fruit. We get analog adventures. We take beneficial stress. And our last one, our conversation for today specifically, is how are we going to do that? By making loving boundaries. And loving boundaries, if you're familiar with the reset, this should ring a bell. If you're familiar with the idea of putting up healthy hedges, this should ring a bell. But it's going to be a concise conversation on that exact thing, that the 5th fix for healthy tech, or to fix unhealthy tech, I guess, to maintain or to fix tech health, is loving boundaries. It is both within your purview as a loving parent, and it is within the scope of discipling our children and raising them up in the way they should go, to set loving boundaries and to have regular conversations on this. So before I go any further, this conversation is really key to both of the books that are coming out August 13th. So Anna's book, The Graceful Disconnect, and my book, Gospel Centered Tech. And I am being pretty broad when I call it my book. I wrote all the words, but I had amazing editorial help and help focusing my ideas to make it as effective as possible. So I'll keep calling it my book because that is what it is. But I also want to make sure I shout out just the people in the acknowledgments, the amazing editors, the amazing proofreaders, the incredible people who help me think through my ideas, my board, my wife. Like, it's big. So I'm going to keep calling it mine. But every time I call it my book, I'm like, ugh, that's like true, but it's true with an asterisk. So that being said, these books come out, and the point of the 2, they launch August 13th. The reason we are making these books is to give families resources to do exactly what we're talking about, to talk about how do we put up loving boundaries around ourselves, around our kids, and putting tech as an important conversational step in a healthy spiritual life. So in our conversation about healthful tech, in talking about loving boundaries, we need to really address 3 things. First, that there are 2 kinds of technology. I was actually just talking this morning with a family counselor. She moved from a school counselor to being in private practice. This is basically what I want every counselor, what I want every camp coach, what I want every sports athletic coach, teacher, administrator, parent, pastor. This is what you need to know when talking to young people about technology. Certainly there's big picture ideas on motivation and goals and purpose in Christ, and identity and being saved, and assurance of salvation, and all those things, very important and awesome. But when we talk technology, we have to talk about the 2 kinds of tech. There's tool and there's drool. One helps us create, one helps us consume. We have to talk about tech health. How do you know if you're okay? And we have to talk about what are we doing to ensure that this is both a good tech and that it's going to be safe. Basically, our family tech hedges. This summer, as we look at our technologies, you look at your smart TV and your tablets, as you look at your gaming consoles and your laptops, as you look at the smartphones and the places your child is visiting, we're talking about how do we keep tech safe? We're going to do these three things. First, you need to make sure you have talked to your child about what kind of tech are we using. Where is our tool tech? Where is our drool tech? How do we know if it's going well? So in our family right now, we've been in the middle of a move. Tech changes when you're moving. So first piece is what tech are we even using? Our tool tech is pretty much off kilter. We used a lot of, during the school year, we used a lot of Khan Academy. We did a lot of AR reading, which is like kids read a book and then they take a quiz on it for school. And then it's a nice incentivized way to both assess that the facts have been read. It doesn't make the deepest readers ever, I will acknowledge that. It's not my favorite as a teacher, but as a parent, like, I get it. It's a nice way to motivate the school to be readers, because at the end of the day, you're going to learn skills that you wouldn't learn if you didn't read. So that's a tool tech. We're not using a lot of it right now. But drool tech, we've got our laptops. They're watching some TV. They're watching some shows, especially when dad needs to record podcasts, right? Like, I get it. Real life happens. We manage the shows so that we know what they're watching. We don't just send them onto the internet and say, come back in 30 minutes. We still have hedges built around for safety, and we're being intentional with it. So that's the first thing we can do, is assess the tech we're using. And then we assess the effect that it has. Again, in a life of transition, finding our kids' activities can be really hard. And it's been a challenge for us to make sure, like, hey, we're not just throwing you a laptop because we're stressed and we're packing, or that we're, moving back and forth between the houses. So this is going to help you feel a little more satisfied. Instead, going, hey, how do we help you be a part of this process? Let's build some risk and responsibility in. Like, sure, we knocked out some pillars at this new home. Like, don't worry, they weren't load bearing, but there's definitely video of Owen using a 12-pound maul to try to knock down one of these pillars, right? Like, that's risky. It absolutely is dangerous. Owen has split wood before. He has shown himself faithful with sharp and heavy objects, and he is in the presence of his father as we were attempting to do this. Henry used a 4-pound maul, which just bounced right off these posts. But he gave it a good shot, man. He put his body into it, and they only almost hit the wall next to the post once, which would have been a lot more patchwork for me. That would have been a bummer. But trying to find ways, like, how can we get you guys engaged? Because there's not a ton you can do that's like super helpful, right? You're 10 and 8 at the end of the day, and the projects that have to get done involve either really heavy lifting or a lot of heavy machinery. So, like, what can we have you participate in? Those took some creativity. It takes some prayer. But those are, in reality, the drool tech shows up a lot more in summer for us, because the cadence for regular life is there. You're not going to sports, you're not going to school, you're not going to regular things that take your time, your focus, and your energy and direct it in healthful ways. Instead, we're finding ways for you to do that. So what else can we do? That is reality, and you need to just make sure you know it. It's not to shame anyone. It's not to say, oh, you use too much drool tech and you should only play outside. Please play outside. And I get it, real life happens. So once you know that, then you go, is it healthy? We have drool, is it a problem? And right now, the shows, they're not causing attitude issues. They're not causing problems in relationships and responsibilities in our children's emotions, sleep, enjoyment, or time. And when they do, that's when we immediately throw in an analog adventure. It's a 10-minute time on the trampoline. Don't come inside till you've jumped for 10 minutes and take your sister, right? We do quiet time still, 10, 8, and 5. Anna's been very fastidious about building these in. I would not start with an hour. I would start with 5 to 10 minutes. But the kids, you got to play something on your own. We kept a couple board games out from being packed, which is driving the older two nuts that we packed so many of their games, because that is a go-to. But it's forced them into other activities. We've overspent on books in the season because we can't get to the library enough. So we are just Amazoning so many books. Right now, the kids are in the Green Ember series, and Owen and Henry are both into it. They are into, oh my goodness, it's Green Ember. The other one that's like exactly like Green Ember that I can't remember off the top of my head, Wing Feather Saga. It's not exactly like, it's a very similar vein. It's people instead of animals, but there's some animals involved. So Green Ember, Wing Feather, and then they've really enjoyed the Peter Nimble series. It's a 2-book series right now. Just know that it's a little darker on its humor. Like if you're okay with your kids reading Roald Dahl, Matilda, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you'll be fine with this. But and James and the Giant Peach, it's on par with that. Basically, this boy's blind, but he's blind because he was attacked by a raven as an infant, and like that's pages like 1 through 5. So, and it's not grotesque, but it is like, that's a weird topical theme, but they love it. They love the author's sense of humor, and they love the plot, and it's engaging and moves at a good pace. So if you're okay with a little more macabre, not death and, celebrating darkness, but just a bit of a darker sense of humor. So I wanted to give that a preface in case someone Googles it and like, Nathan said it was great. It is great. For our family, we've agreed that it's well written and it's appropriate for where our children are at, but maybe not all families would agree. So those are some of the adventures that we begin to throw in when the reset goes off. When we talk about how do we make our tech safe, we know the types of tech. There's tool and there's drool, and they're designed differently. Tool tech helps you create, son or daughter. Drool tech helps you consume. It's not bad, but just know that it's not there to help you. It's there to distract you. And that's a part of the revenue stream. It's part of how the company is built, and they do it on purpose, and they're very good at it. So if you find your heart starting to stray towards, I'm not using this because I want to have, because I am happy and I want to extend my happiness. It's I want that thing because I want to feel happy. I'm now using it as an emotional support. That's concerning. That will show up in relationships and responsibilities, emotions, sleep, enjoyment, and time. And as soon as one of those is off, you can insert an analog adventure. Not saying take a month off necessarily. You can take an hour off. Hey, you know what? Go outside for an hour. We're going to go do an activity. You can do a quiet time. That was where the reading came in. Our kids will do these quiet times, middle of the day, take an hour, play a part. We can tell that even doing analog adventures, when they get too much time together, they just start to grate on each other, man. They'll start arguing about dumb rules. They'll start arguing about who shot better on the basketball hoop. They'll start arguing about the made-up stories that they're making together about whether or not the other person's following the appropriate story. Like, they just start to chafe, and so an hour away is great. And then, once we have that time, we can start to add things back in. Adding things back in like the analog adventure side or some of the tech. Like, sure, you can watch a show this afternoon. But we made sure that we had some of this away time. How do we make your tech safe then is, well, if it's a safety concern, we need to make sure we have hedges. We have hedges around our family, we have hedges around our devices, and hedges around our network. The family hedge is the most important. It's the preeminent because it involves the relational side. If your child cannot be trusted to answer a question honestly, then your child cannot be trusted on the internet. I had a conversation with a family where they said, hey, we know that our child is unhealthy with his tech use. We know that he is lying to us about his tech use because we've caught him partitioning his hard drive. We've caught him sneaking around in behavior. We've caught him breaking the time and expectations for our tech use and the locational tech use. And we are scared about his response to us, which is a very real human parental response. I want to acknowledge that fear is there, that you're going to isolate your child, you're going to sever ties relationally. Like the fear of what a child, anywhere from 8 to 18, or 17, what a kid is going to do when you push back in a parental way to disciple, to correct a child, to be able to verbalize that we're scared of the outcome and we don't know what's going to happen. Those three are huge, and you need to hear them because that means your child is not healthful or healthy. It means the tech is a problem and needs to go away for at least a month. At that point, it isn't, oh, we're going to try to dink and dunk and like change these little things and see if we can get to a bigger spot. It's not take an hour off and do a quiet time at that point. We need major tech surgery because we love our child, and to keep that child safe, we need to hedge around our family. We need clear expectations and guidelines. We need clear communication and relationship. And we need to build the trust around technology that extends from a real world relationship and rapport. So by that meaning, child needs to show up for family dinner. Child needs to be able to receive feedback. If that child is not doing well with friends or with siblings or with schoolwork or with whatever responsibility he or she is taking, you need to be able to say that, and that child needs to be able to ingest it and apply it. Meaning, I see I did that wrong. I'm really sorry. I want to make this right. I'm going to change this thing and that thing. I'm going to follow what you've said that I need to do. I'm going to make adjustments because I can see that there were things I couldn't see, and I understand from the outside. If your child can do that, phenomenal. They're going to do great in a digital space because mistakes are going to be made, and that child needs to be mature enough to understand mistakes happen, people who love you corrected it, and you can take action to fix it. If that child does not receive it, if that child says, I know I'm doing it wrong and I don't care. If that child says anything other than, I see where I was wrong, I know that you love me and I'm going to adjust my behavior, which can sound like, hey, I hear that you're worried about that, but I see it this other way. That's receiving feedback and being part of the conversation. Maybe there really is something you just don't get. That's why your child is there, to communicate in a relationship. Phenomenal. That's still part of being safe with a family hedge. Have those conversations. When the hedge shows we have structure, you're purposely circumnavigating it, or you're repeatedly doing it on accident. You don't appear to know where the boundaries are. Now you can take loving, intentional steps, not out of fear, not out of anger, not out of anything trying to teach character by marching uphill both ways, but instead by intervening lovingly between your child and what is hurting your child or others through your child, and saying, I love you too much to let you hurt yourself in this way. I'm going to remove this thing, or we're going to replace it with these other adventures we're going to take. We're going to continue to build amazement and creativity and awe in you. We're going to continue to invest in things that you love, but they're going to happen at the pace of real life. They're going to be real world, like our conversation from last week, where they're going to involve other people. They're going to happen at the pace of real life. They're going to be synchronous. They're going to be one-to-one or one-to-several, and they're going to have a high cost to entry because we're not just going to throw you into cheap, expendable experiences that build cheap, expendable relationships because they're convenient, that make cheap, expendable character. Okay? Individuals who can just drop their identity at the drop of a hat and pick up a new one because that's the avatar I am now. That's not what we're doing. We're building real people that are eternal spirits that will not die. This body will fall off, but your child is going to live forever. The question is, who will he or she become? And we want it to be more like Jesus so that they can have eternal life, not eternal separation from their loving Heavenly Father. So it starts with relationship and conversation. If you see there's a problem there, that's where you dig in. Get family counseling. Go talk to a loving pastor at your church. Get this out in an area where you can receive professional help and you can begin to break down the walls and figure out where are sticking points for our relationship first. If your child does not trust you, and if you don't trust your child, the internet's off the table. Like, don't do it. Your kid's going to get sneaky. He or she is going to get into trouble, and it's going to cause harm that you will not be there to support and to talk through. The